So a few weeks ago, we looked at the Dungeon Alphabet, which is a fantastic resource for dungeons, and today we're looking at the Adventures Almanac, which is a similar kind of resource, but it's a really good resource for a greater campaign or a sandbox campaign, or generally a world that you're trying to make come to life or be a little bit richer. I think combining these two for a campaign is fantastic. If you need ideas, they're both really good. They're both made by Michael Curtis, who, if you're familiar with his work, makes really, really great stuff. And I've actually used this book a lot more than I've used the Dungeon Alphabet. This is not like a contest or anything. It's just that for these sandbox games I've run in the past, this has been really useful for making the village that the players are in just seem a little bit more lively and have a bit more cool things that I didn't think of until I read through some of the stuff here. I was like, oh, that's great. I'm just going to take that and pop it in here. So you can run this as is and just take the 13 months and all the days and everything and just run as is, like, oh, hey, this is my actual calendar for my fantasy game. However, I've used it more as a way to just take out events and certain things I found interesting and just throw them into my world. So you can use it both ways, which makes it really, really useful for that. Though I think the best way to just showcase this is just to go through one of the months. So we're going to look at the 9th month Starfall, and I'll just break down how it works. So let's just get into it. So the first thing you have for every month is the calendar. And already the first thing you'll probably notice is that there's not like Monday, Tuesday, or like, you know, a fancy equivalent. It has different names of animals and like mythical creatures as the names. So basically how you would do it is that you go like Day of the Unicorn, 19th of Starfall, which I actually quite like because I think that's easier to keep track of than having, you know, the same days repeating. I think also that gives it a little bit more of a different flavor. I feel like that extra little thing really makes it feel more fantasy-like. I've been playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 with my buddy recently, and that has like weeks of the animals, and I thought this reminded me a lot of that. So I'm a big fan of that. The other thing you'll notice on this calendar as well is that it also mentions sort of like the big days, which we'll get into what those events are in a little bit, but you'll see different big days. One that I like a lot is Market Day, which I think is a fun thing where like a lot of times when you're just running a game straight and you're like, oh, I'm just doing this and doing whatever I want, which is totally fine, you forget some of the finer details. And I do actually quite like the idea of market days, you know, where everybody comes to town, everybody comes out of the fields or the, you know, neighboring hamlets and that sort of thing. I feel like small mundane stuff like that can sometimes feel like maybe it's boring, but I feel like having those routines that the people in the village are actually following does help it feel like there is a level of community that they're like, no, every 2 weeks we have market day, and on those days everybody comes around, we sell stuff, and we do things, and maybe there's a little party or whatever it is that they have in that village. Every market day and every village settlement they go to could be totally different. Who knows? Before I get too sidetracked, another thing too I quite like as well is that you'll notice they actually give you the real life days. So to use the unicorn, it says 8/31. I think it's great just having the real life equivalent of what month it would be and what date. Just like if you're looking at doing more seasonal stuff, it gives you a quick idea of what time of year this month is supposed to be. And the last detail I quite like about the calendars is the moon phases, which I think is a very important detail to include, because I think if you're using a calendar and you're using different types of magic, there's a lot of magic that rely on phases of the moon or different times of the year and that sort of thing. So I feel like if you actually know what phase of the moon it is, perhaps magic is more powerful at one point, maybe it's weaker, maybe a certain kind of magic is more powerful. I feel like that's a great one, especially if you have like werewolves in your game and you can keep track of when the full moon is. I think that is a really good little detail to have. I find these are the kind of details you might overlook when you're doing your own campaign, you're not doing this kind of prep, because it might not even be that much extra prep, but it is extra prep. When you do have those details there, it can really add to the world feeling more real. The thing is that a lot of times you really have to dictate how you're going to use your time as a GM, as a world builder. So I think having a book that does a lot of that work for you and you just gotta copy and paste it, I think is a great little resource. But let's move on to the rest of Starfall. So the next bit is just a little blurb on the month itself, as well as some of its traits. So to give you a quick summary of Starfall, a sense of mystery and enchantment pervades the entire month of Starfall. Many minor fairs and celebrations are held in tiny hamlets, and believe that the good spirits are most active during this time. Starfall is a pagan time, a period when even the most civilized residents of the Empire turn their heads to the sky, the forests, and the fields to wonder if there is more to life than the grubbing for coins and the search for diversions to remove themselves from the world around them. And like I mentioned earlier, every month has astrological traits. The sign is Agar the Shield Man, also known as Shields. The day traits are patience, caring, and friendly. Night traits are obtuse, self-centered, and short-sightedness. The positive quirk is Health Aegis. Gain a small bonus to resist diseases, including the magical variety. Negative quirk, Fanaticism. PC has one cause he will put before everything else, including his own well-being. So this is where we get into like the real meat of this book. And that is every month has this D100 table where it has random dates as well as little events. So these are great just for cherry picking and just using them as little plot hooks or little events, things that are happening off in the background. But some of these are actually bigger events that are expanded upon in the later pages, which we'll get to in a second. But a lot of these are really cool, and they're great for just sparking a little bit of creativity. So let's just look at some of these examples. I like this one a lot here, the 13th of Starfall. A gambling house has something new to wager upon. Adventuring bands. Better wagers on the success of professional treasure hunters, raking in coin when their wagers most closely match what the party recovers on adventures. Side bets are also made on party fatalities and other misfortunes. When wagers are placed on the PCs, they learn that not everyone plays fair. That's a really great one because you can have like an actual Deadpool like in the main tavern they go to where people are just like raking up their names and throwing in like how much they think they're worth and that sort of stuff. This can also mean that there's like rival adventuring bands that might go after them and be like, hey, I made a big bet that you guys weren't coming back from this dungeon. I'm going to make sure that you don't. And then you have other ones that are just great little plot hooks for little side adventures. These are fantastic for a sandbox campaign. We have 20th of Starfall. A necromancer with a passion for bones is looking for help in recovering the giant bones of extinct beasts from a number of tar pits up in the hills. The task is difficult, but the pay is good. However, is his interest merely academic, or does he have other plans for these massive skeletons? You have a bunch of these. Every month has this table, so you have so many different small events, different ideas for like fairs and festivals and just fun things. And then you have the expanded events where there's actual paragraphs and other stuff on them, which we'll look at right now. It was really hard to choose which month to actually look at, but the reason I chose Starfall is I felt like the events were different enough that gives you a good idea of all the different things you can find in this book. So the first one we're going to look at is Gratitude of the Healed, Day of the Unicorn, 19th of Starfall. Traditionally, those who have received the administrations of a healer during the previous year repay them for their services on this day. These gifts of gratitude are based on what the patient can afford and range from a chicken to a purse of coins to a jewel-encrusted token of their thanks. The day is not celebrated with much grandeur or pomp and is usually marked by the healed calling upon their healer to express gratitude. And the reason why I picked this one is for the second part here, which I think is just such a good idea. PC healers should use this day to tactfully remind their fellow adventurers of all of the aid they've given them during the past year. At the game master's discretion, those who fail to offer their appreciation to the healer or his church, if applicable, may discover that the healer's administrations no longer work on them. Only adequate compensation will correct this matter. Regardless if you do the GM thing where you don't have the gods actually heal the ones who didn't thank the healer properly, I think this just opens the door for a really fun inter-party interaction. I quite like the idea of if they know it's coming, like if you have the calendar up and like they know the different days that are coming because they've been around for a while, or this is their world and they should just know this. I could actually see some really cute stuff with like a group actually getting gifts for the healer leading up to that day, or like, oh, what we should do, we should really get them like something really nice because we know that the day's coming and they've been super helpful, you know, we're all friends, etc., etc. It could be that like maybe they're actually gonna play a prank on the healer. Maybe that day they're like, ah, crap, all right, I'm buying beers today, that's what we're doing. It's like, really, man, only beers? Like, you know, you wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for me. I just think there's a lot of different stuff that I think makes that really fun, where it's not just you sort of droning on of like 19th of Starfall, on this day the healers do this and there's a procession of all the NPCs doing this, but it's actually like, no, you're a healer and you're part of this world and this community and, you know, this culture. How are you reacting? This is a thing that you're a part of. Like, this is your world. How do you interact with this? I'm definitely gonna use that at some point because I do love seeing my different groups interact differently. Some of them I could see actually being super wholesome and some less so. And the next one is Gudruk Fear, or Gudruk Fear, however you pronounce that. Day of the Newt, 25th of Starfall. This one's a really long one. It's like 3 different paragraphs, but essentially this is a giant holiday where the giants sort of celebrate their thankfulness and their good fortune that, you know, between dealing with dragons and humans and rocks and all those other creatures that they deal with trying to survive in the mountains of the hills, they sort of show thankfulness for their fortune. And the reason why I wanted to pick this one is that I like it because it actually lays out the schedule of when they're going to be eating and drinking, you know, in the morning versus the night, what they're going to be doing. So I feel like this is a great one to take if you're doing some sort of campaign that has to deal with giants and you actually implement this where it actually feels like they have a culture and that they're a people and that they have interesting things. It not only makes them more interesting, but that could be part of the plans. Because maybe you're doing like a frontier game where the PCs are part of an outpost and this outpost is at war with the local hill giants or something like that. And I could see this going a bunch of different ways. It could be a way to show like, hey, maybe we can find a way to actually resolve our differences here. We respect your holiday. We're going to do this for you guys. Here's like a truckload of pigs or whatever it might be to try and see if we can find some sort of common ground between us. You could go a more malicious way where it's like, okay, we know they're going to be sleeping in and drinking and doing whatever at these times. This is the perfect time to attack when their guard is down. So I feel like it both fleshes out that culture a lot as well as gives many opportunities for RP as well as plans. I feel like that adds a lot of intrigue and fun drama where it's like, no, we're not just going to attack on this day because, yeah, it's the next day and we're going to attack them because it's finally come to a head. It's like, no, let's wait 2 weeks for that holiday. In that 2 weeks, we'll make other preparations, we'll do other things, but when that day comes, we're coming for those giants. And I thought we'd look at one more just to round out with 3, you know, the nice magic number. So what we're looking at now is the Horned Moon Night, Day of the Toad, 24th of Starfall. The most feared night in the Parade of the 13 Moons, the Horned Moon Night is the time when deviltry runs free about the world. The barriers between the mortal world and the infernal are torn under the Horned Moon, allowing a macabre parade of imps, incubi, succubi, and soul buyers to ride the night winds and visit lonely crossroads. The only souls out on this night and not safe behind the walls of stone, silver, salt are those on evil business. Any magic or enchanted items that conjures up devils or demons has its chance of success increased by 50% on the night of the Horn Moon. Spells that automatically bring up such a creature either summon twice the normal amount or one summon of the next more powerful variety. This is a cool one for obvious reasons. I think this could be a great time for them to shine if they need to defend the town, if they're off doing crazy weird stuff, if they're hoping they're actually going to be able to make a deal with a demon that night. We're like, oh, I've been looking forward to this for like 3 months. This is going to be the night where I finally am able to sell my soul for a really, really sweet castle, or whatever the hell they're looking for. And so I think that one can be used in a variety of ways. That could be the day that the big bad is like, this is the day that this thing's going to happen. That's where the players know, like, we really should stay indoors. It's going to be super dangerous out there. But we know the cult that's over in that dungeon is going to be doing the ritual that night. We need to get over there before then and stop it. It could be a really interesting day where the settlement actually has a strange way of dealing with this night, or maybe they put like a giant salt ring around the entire village and the village actually just stays up all night and dances and parties and stays safe to keep the devils away. Whatever you want to do with it, it's just there as sort of an idea, and then from that you can take it and go off to the races with it. But yeah, that pretty much covers the Adventures Almanac. You have so much different content in this book. You can use it in so many different ways. It works for lots of different kinds of fantasy. You might need to change things a bit where it could be a little bit generic, where it has, you know, goblins or kobolds or orcs or whatever else, and you're like, those aren't really in my world. I'm going to change them to beast men or lizard folk or whatever it might be that you're doing with your world. It's very easy to convert. It's just basically a big book of flavor. So if you're just looking for a really good resource for your sandbox campaign where you just want a lot of good ideas, this is a fantastic one. So I highly recommend the Adventures Almanac. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You can follow me over on Patreon. You can join the Discord. I have a second channel where I do gaming stuff. I also have Twitch. I have the Actual Play podcast. Feel free to join anything of the ever-mounting list of stuff I keep making myself do for some reason. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a good one, and stay safe out there.